Coming up on Mountain News this morning, we have an update on the plane crash that took the lives of 2 last week. And domestic violence is unfortunately everywhere, but there are always those trying to push back the statistics.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News This Morning.
Good morning, I'm Olivia Calfee. We are coming up on 6:30 on October 2nd. Now let's check in with Chief Forecaster Brandon Robinson for a look at your forecast this morning. Brandon, another foggy start. People need to be careful as they start to head out to work and on to school.
Exactly. So just be careful out there. Give yourself plenty of time to get back and forth. We'll hopefully start to see some of this lift here in the next little bit. Let's take a look at Lake Cumberland this morning, and you can see a little bit of fog down that way. It's hard to see across the lake. You can kind of see that blinking light there in the middle of the lake, but for the most part, not a whole lot to show you out there this morning. Temperatures back down in the 40s there in Clintwood, 62 on the other end of the scale at Jackson, 61 Monticello, 57 Somerset, Moorhead, London, Logan, and over toward Ashland as well. So some warmer spots out there. State and region wide, 55 Carbondale, 56 Cincinnati, 63 Louisville, Nashville, 59 in Knoxville this morning. Heading up to about 81 a little bit later today, maybe a little bit later, a little more than that, 82 potential there with lots of sunshine. Olivia?
Brandon, thank you. Police are searching for a man who is missing from a minimum security prison. James Baker, 32, is serving a 7-year sentence at the Bell County Forestry Camp, but walked away Sunday evening. Baker is 5'10" and 195 pounds. He has green eyes and black hair. If you know where Baker is or where he might be heading, please call KSP at 606-573-3131 or the camp at 606-337-7069. Last night, the Dollywood Express train derailed, according to park officials. Dollywood spokesman Wes Ramey says all passengers were evacuated and there were no injuries reported. Ramey went on to say the train experienced a mechanical issue. For those that don't know, the Dollywood Express is a 110-ton coal-fired steam engine that takes guests on a 5-mile trip around the park and through the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains. Over the weekend, we learned new details from the National Transportation Safety Board on the deadly Ohio County plane crash. The NTSB shared a timeline of what led to the crash that left a pilot, instructor, and student dead. Investigators say the two were in the last leg of a cross-country flight. Last week on Wednesday night, they were flying from Owensboro to Bowling Green and back. Around 10:40 that night, on their way back to Owensboro and passing Beaver Dam, the plane changed course. Soon after, air traffic control lost communication with the pilot. NTSB investigator Dan Boggs says it's too early to say if severe weather was the cause of the crash. He says they are still searching the debris field where the plane crashed.
Our final reports can take up to about 16 to 18 months before they're published. There's a lot of information that has to be analyzed. We may look at some parts of the aircraft structural wise, we may not, but gathering all this weather information, pilot qualifications, and interviews, it can take a while.
Boggs said a preliminary report could be released in 10 to 15 days. Saturday, community members in London gathered downtown to raise awareness for Alzheimer's in the 3rd annual Walk to End Alzheimer's. The Walk to End Alzheimer's is the largest fundraiser across the country for Alzheimer's and dementia. April Gooden, the chair of the walk, says this walk serves as the kickoff to Alzheimer's Awareness Month in November. Gooden says the event is something that informs people of the resources available through their association.
You know, it's something that was needed in this area. Alzheimer's Association brings a lot of resources and things that people don't know are out there for them. When they're suffering with this disease, when they have loved ones that are suffering, they don't realize that there is an entire community of people who have had those same experiences. And sometimes you need that camaraderie.
Gooden says their goal was to raise $50,000 and have currently raised $50,140. October 1st also marked the beginning of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Each year, more than 10 million Americans are subjected to domestic violence. Those who are working to change that stat say it's important to raise awareness every day. Greenhouse 17 is the domestic violence program that serves the 17 counties in central Kentucky.
Not to normalize it as if it's okay, but to normalize it in a way that says you have a right to other choices and options. And this is not anything you should be ashamed of. Things happening to you is not your shame or burden to carry, although most survivors feel it is.
Thomas says it's important to continue to raise awareness for domestic violence every day and not just in October. New details from the Centers for Disease Control show more than 1/3 of American adults are obese, and Kentucky and West Virginia have some of the highest rates. Olivia Russell has details from the study.
The CDC defines obesity as having a body mass index equal to or greater than 30, and every year they look at rates state by state. The new data, called the Adult Obesity Prevalence Map, polled adults in all 50 states. The numbers showed every state had an obesity rate of at least 20%, and 22 states had an obesity rate of at least 35%. Kentucky and Indiana sit in that range. 3 states, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and West Virginia, had obesity rates of 40% or higher. On the other end of the spectrum, D.C. had the lowest rate. Dr. Meredith Sweeney with Norton Weight Management called the data disappointing and offered advice for people who want to make immediate changes to their diets.
We need to think of food differently. We need to get ourselves away from the highly processed, or what we call over-processed foods. Things that come in a box or a bag that have a million ingredients that you can't even pronounce and they just sound all like chemicals. Those are not what we were meant to be eating on this earth.
There were some disparities in the numbers, too. The data showed obesity affects African Americans and Hispanic Americans the most. It also showed obesity rates decreased as the level of education increased, with college graduates having the lowest rate across the country. In the studio, Olivia Russell, Wave News.
Baptist Health held a block party Saturday to help increase access to life-saving cancer prevention education. The annual event aims to raise awareness about what your risk factors are and what screenings are available. The goal is to take cancer prevention out of a clinical setting and into a family-friendly environment. Activities offered included games, food demonstrations, on-site Zumba, and activities for kids.
Cancer obviously affects a large amount of the population through families, friends, things like that. This shows, one, ways to support family members, going through things like that. It also teaches people how they can be preventative and look to screen and prevent being at risk for cancer.
The event offered screenings provided by Baptist Health doctors, nurses, and staff, and brought a number of community resources together, including the Kentucky Cancer Program, Kentucky African Americans Against Cancer, and the Colon Cancer Prevention Project. This year, Corbin officials decided they wanted to have a food week every quarter, and the first week of October marks the start of Dessert Week. WYMT's Jack Demler was in Corbin to talk with the director of tourism as well as a local restaurant about this sweet week.
I hope you brought your sweet tooth. 9 locally owned restaurants are gearing up for Corbin's second annual Dessert Week.
It was a huge success last year when we rolled it out, and we thought it would be a really great idea to do it again this year.
Running from October 2nd through the 7th, Dessert Week allows community members to try some custom-made culinary sweets for $6 per dish.
It's just basically an opportunity for people to try something different without it breaking the bank.
Like Bubby's Barbecue's Barnyard Skillet Brownies.
We tried to think of something that was like a table dessert that could be shared. It's in a little skillet, and 2 or 3 different people can eat out of it at once.
A delicacy that manager Michael Shepard says is a fan favorite.
That's what a lot of people come just for the brownies, believe it or not, and to be able to do a bigger version like this skillet and adding to it is just, I think people really like it.
Giving community members a sweet treat to end Corbin's year of food. In Corbin, Jack Demler, WYMT Mountain News.
Holland says now that Dessert Week is in its second year, they have more of an opportunity to promote it. You can find the full list of participating restaurants and their dessert on our website. And yesterday, millions of Americans were due to start repayments on their federal student loans. It comes after a more than 3-year suspension during the pandemic. However, borrowers may qualify for lower monthly repayments under the SAVE plan. Some may even have a zero payment depending on how much they make and the size of their family. For the next 12 months, borrowers can also skip payments without facing the financial consequences of defaulting on their loans.
Coming up on 640 here, and we're looking at the Mountain Parkway near the Wolf-Powell County line there close to Slade, and you can see not a whole lot of traffic out there this morning, but even when the lights go away, the moon is so bright you can still see that even though there's no lights up there this morning. 59 up that way, 57 in Moorhead, 52 in Irvin, Hazard 2, back to 50 in Clintwood, 52 in Jonesville, 57 Somerset, London, 58 Pikeville, 55 in Prestonsburg this morning. Out the door forecast, you're going to see temperatures that will soar into the low 80s this afternoon thanks to some sunshine. Should be a beautiful day across the mountains. Olivia?
Thanks, Brandon, and thank you for joining us. The time is now 6:40. Still to come on Mountain News this morning. Former President Trump is heading back to court today with a case that could stop his company from operating in New York.